Our main lesson now is really just history, right? And it's mainly history in relation to literature and in relation to drama. And so, um, I'd like to show you something that I used to visit quite a lot. So that is essentially a museum that I visit, yes. And I took this picture maybe 2, 3 years ago.
Why do you look so annoyed?
I was trying I was trying to work out the whole camera how it works. And I said that this is so annoying. Okay. So that's me in a museum, and if you look at the background there, it's essentially a combination of a mythical creature in ancient times. And this is the section in the British Museum, right? So I visited a lot of this in the British Museum from one place to another. The whole thing is really huge. And it was the place that I probably want to take you there. That was the plan, but things happen with the whole virus. So here I look at a few things, right? And those ones are, there's a special word for this. This when you carve something in the wall, or you put something in, carve something in the wall. What do you call that in art? Because you've done a history of art already.
A drawing in a wall.
Well, not a drawing, but carvings on the wall. Yes. So here, this one, the one that I'm pointing the arrow, did you see these little things here? Right? Those little things? Now where the arrow is. Now what do you think are those? Okay, those are triangular shapes. And how are they putting that in? Is they use a stick in the shape of a triangle, right? A stick. So you have a long stick, and at the end you shape it in a triangle, and they use that to press into wet clay. And that type of writing, yeah, in a triangular shape is called cuneiform writing, and that's the first written language in the world, right?
I've heard that before.
Yeah. So, so if we were meeting, yes, we would have done that the same thing, is how to try writing them in those cuneiform writing. So in the past, I did try to recreate what they have done many years ago, and this is like more than 5,000 years ago. And that we try to recreate it. These are some of students' work, right? Not as good as the original, but you get an idea. Here's another one. I couldn't, this is the other one. This is a student trying to recreate the whole writing. When you are trying to recreate what these ancient people have done, I always thought when I saw those triangular marks, I said, that's very easy. That's really easy. Yeah, I can do that. And so I tried doing it myself, and some of the students tried to do it themselves. And it's really difficult, yeah. And the reason why it's difficult is that the people who did this writing, they are being trained for years, for more than 7 years even, right? So it's a professional job to be able to write these triangular shapes, this cuneiform writing. Now, um, are you following the discussion, all of you, at the moment? Right? Okay, so let's move on.
Yeah.
So, in the same museum that I was in, right? In that same museum, there is this figure that I'm going to show you again. So this man, George Smith, he was an engraver, and of course, like people at the time, this is during the Victorian age. People at the time, some of them don't go to school, and he basically worked as an engraver, helping people to print their books. And his main interest is going to the British Museum, and he read as much as he can about what's written in the museum. And at the time, parts of the museum, there is a library. But now, today, you cannot even go to the library in the British Museum. Why? Because there's no library. Everything is for just display. And if you want to read more about it, you go to buy something. But there's also a special section of the museum where you can be a member and become a part of everything, where you could access some of the resources. So that was George, and George became so fascinated with the whole thing that he started to work in the British Museum. Now, what was he doing in the British Museum? So what he does is really tidy and clean some of these wall sculptures or reliefs. And he does that, and then he discovered something. He discovered a passage in one of the tablets saying about the flood, right? The flood. Now, have you heard any, can you remember any famous stories about the flood?
Noah's Ark, when they put all the animals on the ark and then they take one of every species and leave the other ones to die.
Thank you. Yeah. So Noah's Ark is one of the famous flood stories. The other flood stories that I've told you about is
Edward's Ark.
yes, Louis.
That's nothing.
So the other story was about Manu and the fish, yeah, leading to the
Of course.
flood. And the other one was and the other one was a version discovered by George Smith. Yeah, because George Smith, the one that I was the man that I was showing you, telling you about. Yeah, George Smith. And he was going through the tablets in this museum, and he was learning to read cuneiform writing. And then he realized that there's a passage there talking about the flood. And he wrote about it and he presented about it. The prime minister at the time also attended it, and it was a sensation. Yeah, it was news at the time that there is another version of Noah's flood. Yes? And this is the version from ancient Mesopotamia. And he published it, and he instantly became so popular, right? That the newspaper called the Telegraph, yeah, which still exists today, and I still read some of the news, the Telegraph is sponsored for him, yeah, sent him to ancient Mesopotamia to collect all the pieces about this flood story, because some of the tablets are missing. Right? Some of the tablets are missing. And so he was sent to ancient Mesopotamia. Yeah? And what is ancient Mesopotamia now? What is the land where you call ancient Mesopotamia?
I feel like I know this.
You know this, Louis, right?
I feel like,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, I know this.
So,
Where do I know this from?
Ancient Mesopotamia, we did a bit with music.
Yes, you did it in your history of music lesson.
Yeah, no, I completely forgot.
So the modern, yeah, it's okay.
Sorry.
So ancient Mesopotamia now is what you call, is really rich with oil, right? And that's where, and people harvested the fossil fuels and oil from underneath the earth, and that really contributes to global warming. But modern Mesopotamia is now what you call Iraq, right? Modern day Iraq. And it was in this place that George Smith was sent, right? And so when he went there, and he continued his studies, he was basically working as an archaeologist now. Now it's fascinating that he, how did he become an archaeologist? I mean, he didn't go to school and take a university degree and become an archaeologist. At the time, you are just sent to do, as part of your job. Yeah. So this person, George Smith, didn't go to school like I did or you do, but went on to work, become a very prominent archaeologist. And what was discovered was that the flood story that he was talking about, that he published, that he became famous for, was only part of a bigger story. Right? Was only part of a bigger story.
Yeah.
And this piece of literature that that we're talking about, wherein the flood story that was discovered by George Smith is only a part of, this literature is called Gilgamesh.
Ah.
Gilgamesh.
And see, what I'd like to do now is, in the past, the Gilgamesh story has been told to you in a story. And when I started learning about the story around 15 years ago, there wasn't a lot of things on it. But now it's all over the place. And at the time, I always think to myself, I'm going to illustrate a children's book about it. Yeah.
I think we should.
Yeah. And 4 years ago, when I was in the U.S., yeah, in Florida, somebody did already illustrate it, right? I couldn't find. I don't have a book with me because I stopped hoarding books. But some
Stop holding
books, and so somebody already did, and it was like, wow, somebody beat me to it, yeah. And it goes to show that if you don't act now, any ideas of yours, if you don't start acting of them, somebody will do it, yeah. There's like 6 billion people in the world, and so if you have an idea, act on it, yeah. And at that time, there was no children's book about Gilgamesh, nothing. And there's another thing that hasn't been done, and I'm sure it's going to happen soon. Nobody has ever done a film on Gilgamesh.
We did a play. Can't remember which class, but one of the younger classes.
Yes. Thank you for that. Yes, so in some schools, Waldorf schools around the world, they do a Gilgamesh play at around 11 years old. Yeah, but it's really for children. Now I look around. 4 years ago, somebody wrote a script on Gilgamesh, and I also bought that book, and I don't know where it is now. So, but one thing is, I haven't seen a screenplay, a script for film, and I bet within 3 to 5 years somebody will produce a film about Gilgamesh. Right? That's the next one in line. Right. Okay. So, what I like to do for now.
Oh my god, we should do Gilgamesh to the class play. Oh god, not again.
Did you do those, Florence?
Yeah, we did Gilgamesh.
Yeah. But now, what I'd like you to do now is this: I want you to try to remember the Gilgamesh story. Who could remember?
So,
I got a whole lesson book on it, so I can tell you tomorrow.
Okay. And so it's okay. I mean, I'm not, because I kind of familiar with the whole book, because like every 2 years I kind of look at it. So it's one of those advantage of being a teacher, is you get to read the same story again and again, and every time I read about it, I always find something new, right? And so this is probably the 10th time I read them, and one thing that it was new to me is that I haven't listened to the book. I always read it, right? And when I was trying to research this, I was trying to get a hold of a book to send to you, all of you, so you could read it. But Amazon, because I regarded it as non-essential. So they're not going to deliver. And that's why I don't have...
Still delivering. It's just taking longer.
Yes, but not in time to be able to reach your house. Yeah, not in time to reach your house. But what's so nice is that I found an online version of the book, audio. And what is fascinating is that it hasn't been taken down, because it's the whole book, done in audio. It hasn't been taken down, and it's been published 2 years ago, and nobody seems to be listening to it. There's only like 100 something view, right? 100 something view, and if you order the whole book, it costs like £10 something. Yeah, audiobook. So
really, £100.
110 pounds. So what I like you to do now, and towards the end, is basically listen to the audiobook, because this is basically the popular version, and my teacher on this, Dr. Alwyn, he specializes on literature, and yes, she recommended this version, and the reason why she recommends it is that it's closer to the poetic version, because the Gilgamesh is as a whole is a long poem. And by the way, just for another information, is Gilgamesh is the first written literature in the world, the first written kind of novel or literature or epic in the whole world. So it's the oldest written piece of literature. And in the 1900s, from beginning, for more than 2,000 years, nobody knew about it. Nobody, right? So you think about Isaac Newton or George Livingston or Queen Victoria or famous kings in the past, they don't know anything about it. The reason is that the story is new to everybody. It's just been around the last 100 years.
Damn.
So it's a very new book. So now, are there any questions from now for this before I proceed to the next part of the lesson?
I think we're okay to proceed to the next part of the lesson.
Okay.
That will be.
So what I'd like you is go close to the original source of Gilgamesh rather than coming from me or coming from somebody. It's basically when I say close to the first source, because we don't read cuneiform, right? So we only have a translation. And the person who I want you to listen to is translated this book from many different sources. And you have to remember that Gilgamesh's story is not fully complete. Because in all the tablets that's been found, there's always a missing piece. Yes? So there's so many tablets, there's like thousands of them, and there's always part of the tablet that's gone or missing or cannot be read. And so what people did is try to use their imagination. It should go this way. Yeah. So people know how it ends, people know how it begins, but 2/3 to the story, some parts of the tablets are gone or cannot be found. And so what you will listen is basically just a part of it is a retelling and part of it is imagined. That's really important. And when I look around in the 1900s and in the early 1920s and 30s and 40s, people were making up about the story. Yeah, but soon later they discovered more pieces, and so the story is more complete now than ever before. Okay, I'd like to send you that version.
A crowd.
I want you to listen to it because it's the it's the best one that I can hand it on. So, are there any questions for now before I send you the link?
You want us to now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's busy. So I want you to listen to them. And they are really, they're not children's version. Because I do think, the children's version, they're really very so basic.
Yeah.
It's really random. But at your age, you should have the complete version. Okay.
Yeah, you're right.
So I'm going to post them in Google and give me 2 to 3 minutes and it will be there. So the whole story will be at least an hour long. But I want you to listen to them, and when you listen to them, I want you to always have a piece of paper, Google around, do some patterns and drawings, and when something struck you, write that word. Yeah. And the second thing is I want you to remember the repetitions. The repetitions of words through the whole piece of literature, and the other one is the repetition of scenery. And there's a good scenery. There's always that was been mentioned before. Why is he repeating it? And so repetition of words and things that struck you. Yeah? And then we get closer to the full version of the whole story. Okay. Are there any questions from any one of you?
No.
Good. That's it. We're going to end the class, but because in order to proceed and have discussion, we need to listen to the story. So I'm going to close the lesson now, and we'll meet tomorrow again and talk about the lesson, about the piece of literature, and how it changes through time. And I'm also going to send you a few scholarly work of the whole subject matter. You don't have to read them, but if you want, you can. But the major thing is listen to the story, because without that, we can't really proceed. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Goodbye, everybody, and I'll post this now in Google Classroom. Give me 2 to 3 minutes.
What's the Saturday lesson called?
History in relation to literature and drama.
Really? Is that a proper lesson title?
I need to think of a good title, but
Okay, well, that's what it's about.
But it's about history, and we relate the discovery of this piece of literature in relation to the people who discovered them, and also in terms of drama. That's basically what it is.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, and I'll see you. I'm going to post them now.
Okay.
Bye.